She shaved her hair so that it no longer draped in front of her eyes, so she could finally see who she was speaking to. They were alone together for the first time in such a long time. They were naked in front of each other for the first time in such a long time. And she hesitated, and then she spoke so quietly, like the first bird of Easter. So timid. "I want to love you," she said. Her words trailed off like they always do whenever she knew she couldn't say what needed to be said next. It was her way of protecting herself and the people in her life from the dragon that lived inside of her. A dragon who breathed truth instead of fire. A dragon who always had too much to say. 6 months ago, she was asked to give a eulogy at her cousin's funeral, and all the words she wanted to say disappeared into the microphone like they were a herd of animals chasing each other off of a cliff. She said, "Amanda was always such a positive force in this world. I wish we could have had more time together. Heaven just got a new angel." And all of that was just half of the story. She knew it. Amanda knew it, and so did the dragon inside of her. She was just trying to get through the moment. The thing is, sometimes just getting through the moment eats the back half of sentences, which I have discovered contains all of the most gold. Just getting through the moment is often a ravenous beast, and it devours periods and question marks like they're goldfish crackers. She had been trained to keep everything open-ended, to keep the dragon in its cave. The words always trailed off before she was ever tempted to add a "but" to everything that she wanted to say next. And on that terrible day behind the microphone and the coffin of her cousin, all she really wanted to say was, "Amanda was always such a positive force in this world," but that was before she started injecting all of that shit into her veins to the point where she only saw darkness. "I wish we had more time together, but she decided she couldn't trust me enough to ask for help, so we don't. Heaven just got a new angel, but that doesn't make it any easier for us, does it?" She could never get the words "but" to be formed on her tongue. She had a conjunction dysfunction. She could never let the dragon out of its cage because she was terrified that it would burn down the whole world. She had to only speak in half sentences because the truth of how she really felt seemed like an agent of the apocalypse. Saying the word "but" was forbidden since she was a child. Focus on the good, ignore the bad, keep it all in, remain kind. Don't, however, anything, keep your conjunctions to yourself. And that's how she made it through the first third of her life. Her script was just a series of half sentences. She was fluent in the language of sapless words that never really meant anything. And even in that moment, 6 months later, as she stood naked in front of the person she hadn't spoken to in such a long time and had so many things to say, she still felt so inclined to only say the safest words. With her newly shaven head. So there she was, in front of the stranger that she used to know so well, her words just as half-spoken as they've always been. She said, "I want to love you." She wanted to say everything that needed to come next, but she just couldn't get over her wall of fear, so she tried again, "I want to love you." But the rest didn't come. Maybe it didn't matter. The person she was speaking to wasn't saying anything back. They never did. Everything she had to say was like a fat pill stuck in her throat, so she tried another time, like her voice was a car with a faulty starter. "I want to love you," she said. And then without warning, the word came, "but," and it felt like a water balloon exploding inside of her, like the prison walls transformed into Cool Whip, like a knot that had become a string. The unspoken flowers she had been holding on to poured out of her mouth like a daisy petals caught in a hurricane gale, like a caged dragon let out after a long captivity. unsure at first, and then a couple weak flaps of its dragon wings, and then freedom, and then fire, and then truth. Finally, everything she needed to say out loud spilled out of her mouth in a flood of flowers and fire. I want to love you, but I don't think I can until you forgive me for everything that I've done to you. Silence. I want to love you, but I need you to remind me of how beautiful I am. Silence. This person didn't speak back to her, but she could see that they were shaking just like she was, so she placed her hand on the face staring back at her in the mirror. And they both began to cry. The naked woman and her naked reflection. And then her reflection spoke back to her for the first time in such a long time. I forgive you. You are so beautiful. I love you, but, please learn to love me just as much. And that's when the woman and a reflection that she had been speaking to in half sentences for years held each other from across the glass. And everything that needed to be said between the woman and her reflection became covered in dragon fire and flowers. Lots and lots of flowers.